Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm going to be playing with resin, but it's not going to be the resin that I use for 3D printing. I'm going to be using epoxy resin instead, because I just found out that there's this whole crafting community that sort of runs parallel to the 3D printing community, and they also use resin, but they use it in a different way. So instead of 3D printing, they pour resin into molds, and they combine all these really awesome colors, and they make things like trinkets and tabletops and coffee tables and all this really cool stuff. And I thought, man, I would like to incorporate that into figures, the type of stuff that I do. So I want to make a little mini diorama, and I'm going to be using this two-part epoxy resin that I actually got on Temu. Actually, everything that I'm going to show you here, for the most part, I got on Temu, and I'll leave links in the description so that you can find it too, because a lot of things on there are pretty much the same thing you find on Amazon. It's just a lot cheaper. So check that out if you're interested. So what I'm going to do is use one of these molds. So this is a small square silicone mold, and I'm going to take a minifigure. In this case, it's going to be this Raphael minifigure from TMNT, the cartoon. I've had this guy for many years, and I think he was a part of a Mega Brands, Mega Blocks / Mega Set from way back then. And I'm going to put him inside of this silicone mold, and I'm going to try to jazz it up a little bit with some little environmental things, such as I got a little bit of sand here, and then I also have some nice colorful rocks, and then I also have some tufts of foliage, and I'm just going to put all of that inside of this mold, and I'm going to use that epoxy resin to combine everything together. And when it cures, it's going to be just one solid block, and the figure is going to be nice and clear, and you'll be able to see everything inside. This is my first time doing this, and I think the hardest part about it is trying to figure out how you want everything to look and the atmosphere that you're going for. So I'm going to try not to think about it too much and just kind of wing it, and then we'll see how everything turns out. So come on, let's get crafting. So I'm going to start with this sand here. It's sort of like a beige sand, and I'm just going to pour a little bit of it into this mold, pretty much just enough to kind of coat the bottom and then some. And I also have a bag of rocks, and they're kind of big, you know, but I'm just going to try to see what I can do here, and I'm just trying to get a sense of how things are roughly going to look. What I'm thinking of doing is taking this TGRI canister that comes from a NECA TMNT figure. I've probably got like 4 of these, so I'm just going to use this spare one. It was in my box of random parts, and I think I'm going to end up just kind of sitting it kind of like this, maybe even standing it up a little bit, but I'm not going to leave it in there right now. I'm going to wait until we get to that point, and I'm just going to tear off some little tufts of this and just kind of plop it down here on the surface. I think that pretty much takes care of the atmosphere that I'm going for. Just like with any other kind of resin, you gotta wear your nitrile gloves when you're dealing with it. And I need to mix equal parts A and B together in order to kind of complete this concoction. So I measured how much liquid will go into that little cube, and it's about 7 ounces. So I'm gonna do about 3.5 ounces of A and 3.5 ounces of B. I'm just gonna keep stirring this up. Stirring it for, I don't know, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes till it's nicely incorporated. I also got this bag of dyes from Temu that I can use to color this resin. So I'm going to give this a good shake like you would with any kind of a paint. And give this a bit of a stir. So this one is coming out looking kind of like a bluish green, kind of, sort of. Just to see how this is going to work, I'm going to take Raphael here and I'm going to see if I can put him in here and have him not fall over. I could probably wait a little bit longer until this is firmed up a little bit. And then I will just pour a little bit of this other type of resin just kind of around it. Get some on this side as well. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this to just sort of cure, get a little bit tacky, and then I'll come back and add some more resin on top. And that is where everything went wrong. It's my fault. I should have waited for that resin to cure a little bit longer, because what ended up happening is when I poured more resin on top, because the figure was not secure and the TGRI canister was not secured, everything started to float right to the top. So basically, this is what I came out with. And as you can see, Raphael his face is hidden behind the TGRI canister. It's very kind of cloudy. You can't see all the way through it. And I was thinking like, okay, well, maybe I can put in my mind that this is a underwater scene, and that would explain why the color looks a little bit bluish green and why Raphael is looking like he's floating instead of standing up on his 2 feet. But basically what happened is he started to lose his footing, and then I took a long toothpick and I was trying to get him to, stand up, but it just wasn't happening. And in the course of that, it created all of these little tiny bubbles all the way around, because I kept disturbing it. That sort of blue-green resin mixture, instead of staying in one spot, ended up getting mixed with all the other resin. And then it just sort of came out like this. And this is what we call a learning experience. And that's also why we don't give up. So the very next day, I went back and I decided to try it again with some different miniatures that I've painted. And I wanted to sort of recreate something like this and then learn from the mistakes that I made with this. And then I got something that is a lot better, in my opinion. So here's a closer look at this. So I call this one Barbarian Dude versus Zombies. So the zombies are 3D printed, and I just did a really quick and dirty paint job on them. And then the barbarian guy was part of this Dungeons and Dragons line. I think I bought them at Hobbytown USA or something like that, way back when I first started to get into this whole thing and miniature painting. And he's one of the first miniatures that I painted, but I used some knowledge that I've acquired from the blunders I made here to make this one, and I think that it came out so much better. So one thing that I did differently is I mixed the resin slowly. The first time that I mixed the resin with this, I was doing it really fast, like I was beating eggs. And I think that introduced a lot more air into the mixture, which made a lot of really tiny bubbles. So I decided to mix it a little bit more slowly this time. And then when I did that, I made sure that when I put all of the little rocks and the grass and stuff down in there, I waited a longer period of time so it can set a little bit. And I slowly poured more resin on top, and I let it just sort of sit there for a while. I took a little lighter to try to kill off some of those little air bubbles, and then just poured more and more on top. And while I still do have some bubbles on the inside of this, it is miles better than the amount of bubbles that's inside of this one right here. And I like how this turned out. I mean, look at that. I think this tells a very nice, simple story. It's very easy to understand when you look at it. You go like, okay, that guy has green skin, so he's probably bad. Sure, he's a zombie shuffling along. And then we got our hero in the corner there, and he just has to fend them off. And I used the same rocks and the same tufts of grass that I used for the TMNT or the Raphael diorama. And I think this came out pretty cool. So it's just another way to get some 3D printed crafts under your belt that doesn't have anything to do with a resin 3D printer. So if you want to try something like this, all you need is the 2-part epoxy resin. It comes with the resin in one bottle and the hardener in another bottle, and they always come together, at least most of the time. And then you mix those two in equal parts. And then at that point, all you need is a mold of some sort in order to pour it into. And then everything that's inside of that mold with the resin is just going to get encased in it. And you can mix different colors and you can put different things inside of it and really just let your imagination run wild. And because you got that hardener mixed into the resin, there's no UV lights required. You don't need a curing station. You don't need to put it outside so it can cook in the sun for a while. It cures by itself. And usually with these things, you give it definitely overnight. So let's say around like 15 to 24 hours for it to get like nice and solid, ready to demold and cured. And then you'll be able to handle it with your hands. You don't have to worry about anything. So even though it's still resin and is dangerous if you don't have gloves when it's in its liquid form, the curing process is just a matter of waiting it out. So if you're interested in making little things like this, go ahead and check out the link in the description and you'll be able to see exactly where I found the products that I use to make these over on Temu. And if you're interested, you can pick those up and you can try your hand at it too. But I'm just going to continue to try to expand my knowledge when it comes to epoxy resin and that whole side of crafting, and just try to incorporate it into the 3D printing side of things and see what I can come up with. If I come up with something pretty cool, I'll be sure to let you know and show you. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, take care of yourselves and I'll speak to you soon.